Here in my mouth. That Hey, shout out to the commenter on the last TrueCon video I did from Lazy Mosquito. I looked into those channels. Them channels is cool. Their videos just too long and not that easy to react to. Like I'm trying to pause the story, but he's pausing the story as well, so it's kind of difficult. But we back with another Lazy Mosquito reaction. Disturbing online rabbit holes you should know about. Let's get in.
If you haven't come across the term Goodall before, then bless you, my sweet summer child. I had neither. That is, until I stumbled across this well-presented video by the Internet Investigator, in which he covered the mystery of Dissected Chan. And although it's a fantastic upload and well worth your time, I almost wish I hadn't looked deeper into it. Because, as its name suggests, this particular mystery is one of the most disturbing online rabbit holes I've ever come across. I'll now have my own go at covering the case, though trust me, this one isn't for the faint of heart. You know who never stops moving? My mum. From morning till night, she's juggling everything. Work, errands, family calls, always on speaker of course. Mother's Day is already passed in the UK, but there's no reason not to celebrate twice. Raycon, it's her model. That can only from for any reason something special.
Free promos.
For context, Godo, or Ero Godo, emerged as a Japanese artistic movement in the 1920s and 30s, and originally existed to push boundaries. The word Godo itself is a Japanglish interpretation of the word grotesque. So as you can probably guess, artists were creating unsettling and gory pieces, and were doing so to explore themes linked to the nation's history. By the 60s and 70s, the style was adopted by filmmakers and manga artists who wanted to creatively express both the vile and the carnal side of human nature. In more recent years, the movement has evolved, or devolved depending on your point of view, becoming a deeply niche subgenre online, with people sharing images of bloodied and chopped up manga characters. But though many people interested in Guro artwork are simply fans of the macabre aesthetic, others are more interested in the Ero part of the movement, with Ero being, well, whatever Ero tickles your fancy, let's put it like that. As per Rule 34, small communities of people who are really into lifeless anime waifus have formed across the internet, those who take the term body pillow a bit too literally. Enter Guro-chan, the online image board built for both sets of Guro connoisseurs. After launching in 2004, it quickly became the biggest hub for this kind of material, with users posting their original creations for others to enjoy. And yet, despite sounding like a place for snuff lovers to gather, I have to stress that the majority of its user base has absolutely no interest in real-life horror. In fact, since its inception, the site has had one firm rule: no real-life images, artwork only. However, on November 15th, 2007, one anonymous user shattered that rule. In a post titled, "I am Mouth Goal," the OP shared a morbid collection of 10 photos. Images which featured a deceased young woman on a steel gurney, one who's since come to be known as Dissected Chan, or DC for short. The pictures show her torso split open, her organs exposed, brain removed.
The picture is blurred and I know it's graphic already. Like the description of the picture is in fucking insane. Like how do you get a hold of these pictures? If you're not actively working in a morgue or a hospital, how do you get hold of these pictures?
Another body, male, can be seen on the same table, turned opposite, feet near her face. She appears extremely fresh, to the point of almost looking alive. Her eyes are open, yet vacant. Her mouth slightly agape. Her skin waxy. Certain images show her posed to be looking into the camera, with one particularly harrowing shot being a close-up of her face with one of her eyeballs stuffed into her mouth, hence the title of the thread. Another shows the cameraman inserting needles into her. But those aren't the worst. No. Those would be the ones in which the photographer shows himself essaying the woman's remains. Guru-chan moderators deleted the thread almost immediately and permanently banned the user from the site. But just 5 minutes after appearing on Guru-chan, the OP reposted the images to 4chan's infamous random board, B, and there he gave a more detailed explanation. Ever wanted to see how ExzO Guro look alike in the real? This poor girl died just yesterday. Her name was Alex. She was 19, and she died of... So I played a little with the little dead body of her. She did not complain at all. The post concluded. I was all laughing inside when I gave her body to her parents. She was all cleaned up and with makeup, just like alive. They were just stunned by her death. Such a tragedy. And I was all laughing inside. The original post on Guro-chan is now long gone, with the mod.
Whoever made that post is a fucking weirdo. He is the definition of a fucking weirdo.
And community
What?
wanting nothing to do with real-life images of death. But the B repost? It was still accessible up until April 14th of this year, when 4chan was suddenly taken down following a hack by a rival image board. But archived versions of the dissected Chan thread can still be found. Though if you want my advice, don't go looking for it. Because it's not just the images that are hard to stomach, it's the replies underneath them. On B, the photos weren't just tolerated, they were cheered on, and other users were encouraged to join in and mock the dead girl. This is awesome! I love you, Anon. Only thing to outdo this would be to find her parents and mail the images to them. I certainly hope this guy won't get caught. Anyone who participates in his tracing and contacting the law enforcement is an ugly rat. Unfortunately, this isn't the only time something like this has happened. The infamous Dr. Gloves springs to mind for starters. But while the identity of Dr. Gloves was never uncovered, many sleuths wanted to make sure that this monster's name and face were. And so, while most B users were content with making dark jokes, edgy memes, and childish threats, others began investigating. After looking into the metadata of the images, a few users learned that the photos had been taken just 1 day before they first appeared online. That ruled out the idea that they were recycled from the depths of the dark web, or some dusty, well-hidden corner of the surface net. Disgustingly, they had almost certainly been taken by the original poster on Guro-chan. According to him, Alex had supposedly passed away just a day before he made his post. Assuming that to be the truth, GamerChair detectives began scouring online resources for possible IDs, and one user did find a possible lead. They learned that a 19-year-old woman named Kelly Nascimento had lost her life in Florida on November 11th, 2007, just 4 days prior to the DC photos appearing online. She was in a car that crashed into a canal. The timing was almost spot on. The age was a perfect match, and though she wasn't called Alex, it's possible the OP simply gave her an alias. So, could this be her? Probably not. When people compared the public photos of Kelly to DC, some of their facial features didn't seem to match up, most noticeably her nose and eye color. More than that, the English in the original post was poor. Broken grammar, odd phrasing, words missing. That doesn't necessarily rule out the possibility of the images originating in the US, but others began to consider the possibility that they had been taken abroad. And so, users began studying the background of the images. Early on, the presence of a potential second perpetrator was pointed out when viewers noticed this boot in one of the frames. Though to me, that looks more like a table leg with another object at the base. However, what everyone agreed on was that this was a medical facility of some sort. The OP had alluded to this incident taking place in a hospital autopsy room, but the old, cracked, hexagonal tiles suggested that this could have also taken place at a rundown medical school. Thing is, in the US, cadavers donated to science are typically stored in a secure fashion, so if that theory is to be believed, it also suggests that these images didn't originate in the States. A lot of people who saw the original post seemed to be under the impression that they had been taken somewhere in Europe, that the woman was Eastern European, and that the OP was Dutch. Though where they got those ideas from remains unclear, as the Guro-chan post was completely erased. But sticking with that European angle, could these photos have actually been taken in the UK? You see, some users began to wonder if this wasn't an isolated case, but actually the work of a repeat offender, and there was one particularly vile suspect that fit the timeline. David Fuller, a convicted murderer who operated in Royal Tunbridge Wells, England. Fuller was responsible for taking the lives of two women in 1987, Wendy Nell, 25, and Caroline Pierce, 20, whom he had strangled after breaking into their respective homes. It would take 23 years for DNA advancements to link him to their slayings. During those years of freedom, he worked as an electrician and eventually got himself a job at two local hospitals, playing the role of a mild-mannered, ordinary family man. However, upon his arrest in 2020, officers discovered 4 secret hard drives hidden in his home, taped behind a chest of drawers. And what they found on those drives churned their stomachs. Between 2007 and 2020, Fuller had amassed a collection of abhorrent material. Images of himself essaying 101 female bodies, aged between 9 and 100. And whatever you're imagining he was doing with them, trust me, it's worse. He had used his swipe card to enter the hospital mortuaries on his lonesome night shifts, and with everyone who worked there gone, he was free to commit unspeakable acts with them on camera. The hard drives contained thousands of photos and videos he had taken of himself violating the bodies, some captured just a few days before his apprehension, as well as millions of other images he had downloaded from the internet. It took 9 officers 5 months to work through their contents, and my heart genuinely goes out to them. Disturbingly, Fuller's collection had been categorized into folders with titles such as Necrolord and Best of the 2000s. Others were simply labeled with the names of the women he had desecrated, which he had learned by peeking at their hospital charts. Further investigation showed that Fuller had thoroughly researched each of his victims online, browsing their social media pages to get a sense of who they were in life. In the face of monumental evidence, Fuller pled guilty to the murders of Wendy and Caroline, as well as to creating and possessing his twisted content.
I want to admit it. I am admitting the offences, but I don't really want to go into detail.
Yeah.
He was given a whole life order, meaning he'll never be released. In her closing remarks at sentencing, Justice Chimagrup stated, "Among those you abused were women who led fulfilling and rich lives. They were the best. One had flown across the Atlantic in a propeller-driven airplane via Iceland alone. Another was a talented skier. One had worked at Bletchley Park. A number had worked in hard professions such
This nigga had access to a morgue and would like SA deceased woman in the morgue, bro. What? What?
as teaching or in the NHS, caring for others and looking after the interest of their students, clients and patients, and all had families they nurtured and loved. Some spent the last parts of their lives in suffering, whether through disease or old age, but they didn't lose their dignity until you decided to take it from them. The depravity of what you did to those you killed and those you defiled after death reveals that your conscience is seared. It's almost impossible to believe that a single man can cause the misery to so many that you have done. But you did it, and in consequence, you are paying the price that human justice can exact: the rest of your mortal life in prison." All of the images found on Fuller's hard drive were subsequently destroyed. The names of most of Fuller's victims have since been discovered, though to this day, the identities of 10 of them aren't known. So, could Dissected Chan be one of Fuller's unidentified victims? Well, given that he began documenting his sick actions in 2007, and that the images first appeared on Guro-chan in November of that same year, many suspect that the OP responsible for uploading them may well have been Fuller himself, or at least someone that he had shared the images with. In my opinion though, David Fuller wasn't behind this particular set of images, and not just because of the broken English in the Guro-chan post, which he could have easily faked. First and foremost, Fuller was an opportunistic electrician, not someone with medical experience. Given that DC's body was in a mid-autopsy state, with her brain removed and organs exposed, for Fuller to have taken these images, we'd have to believe that a medical professional left her like that overnight, rather than concluding their work and storing her away. Sure, Fuller could have befriended one of the medical staff members and convinced them to let him take the photos, but I highly doubt a doctor would risk his or her job for someone else's sick thrill. It's much more likely that whoever was conducting the autopsy took these images and played with the body themselves. Unfortunately, if we've learned anything over the years, it's that there are plenty of abominable people out there.
Yeah.
Furthermore, these don't strike me as tiles you'd find in a UK hospital, particularly not in an affluent area like Tunbridge Wells, but I'm happy to be corrected on that. As far as I'm aware, Fuller also kept his treasure trove of morbid content for private consumption, as there's no mention of him sharing his images online, though given the anonymous nature of both Chan sites, we of course can't rule that out. Despite all the digging over the years, no one ever figured out definitively who the woman in the DC photos was, nor the identity of whoever posted them on Guro-chan in the first place. But what makes this story truly chilling isn't just the horror that was shared, or the fact that justice was never served. It's the way that these images were consumed so casually, even gleefully, by anonymous strangers online. And in the years since, things haven't changed. Just last month, shortly before the site went dark, another photo emerged on the B-board, showing a supposedly Vietnamese woman who had clearly just been butchered inside a bedroom, alongside a piece of paper with the date, time, and board name written on it, confirming the picture's authenticity. And the general response? Edgy jokes, reposts, and appreciation. Just like with DC, the post was treated like a tidbit of internet lore to be remembered fondly. And that says a lot about who some people truly are behind closed doors, where they're allowed to hide behind a keyboard.
Yeah, people are weirdos. We learn this more and more every day.
Imagine checking your inbox and finding an email from someone that you've never heard of. Someone with a particularly unusual name. You open it out of curiosity, and attached are dozens of videos, PDFs, JPEGs and PNGs, all full of weird news topics, cryptic phrases, and strange messages that sometimes read like a confession. Congratulations, you've just been Tuts honeychurched. About 6 years ago, user ZubZub30 left a post on r/fake names with two simple words: Tuts Honeychurch. Whereas most names on the subreddit are mere thought nuggets daydreamed up by random users, ZubZub had actually discovered Tuts' name in his inbox and presumed it to be an alias. He found the contents of the email unusual, and so decided to post Tuts' name to the subreddit in hopes that someone might reply with some answers. However, the post didn't receive any attention and sat dormant on the site. That is, until years later, when, out of the blue, other people started replying to the thread, saying that they too had received weird emails from someone with that exact same name. As it would turn out, over the course of almost 2 decades, this Tuts Honeychurch had sent out hundreds of thousands of emails to seemingly random people across the globe. Long, rambling, seemingly nonsensical essays. Open up your inbox now and type her name into the search bar. There's a good chance you've received 1 or perhaps 200 yourself, and you haven't even noticed. Those who did googled Tuts' name and found very little concrete information about her online. So, naturally, the more curious recipients congregated on Zub's thread to begin their investigation. Under the post, one user shared that they and their friends had been hit with a barrage of information from Tuts in the form of homemade virtual newspapers, some containing as many as 500 slides of information. The contents revolved around celebrities, politicians, convicted killers, conspiracies, random civilians, and recent topical events, all with a strong focus on Hawaiian news. In others, she's talked frequently about possession, doppelgangers and decoys, psychic mind manipulation, and the reincarnation of people, even while their former self is still alive. Eerily, some people have reported receiving personalized emails from Tuts, in which she addresses them directly by their real name. Many users confirmed that they too had received similar Tuts mails. One said that their girlfriend had even received a resume from Tuts, who was apparently trying to apply for a job. However, instead of a CV, the attachment was full of notes about a 1970s murder spree. Those who've tried to email Tuts back for answers have never received a response. Reading through some of Tuts' email attachments, I've noticed that she repeatedly mentions how she formerly worked as an airport federal security officer, but claims to have been watched, captured, and forcefully disappeared between 2006 and 2015. She also frequently talks about Hawaiian, Portuguese, and Japanese people who seem to share the same heritage as her, and name drops her family members and former classmates. After looking into each person mentioned, I can confirm they all are indeed real people with genuine links to Tuts. These names appear time and time again across her emails, mixed in with her other thoughts and musings. Some philosophical, some paranoid, most incomprehensible. Seriously, if dyslexia was contagious, this is how you'd catch it. What does make sense though, are the long list of names and email addresses that she shares, many tied to government institutions, businesses and the press, though most belonging to ordinary citizens. We're talking tens of thousands of email addresses here, and if you've ever received an email from Tuts, then yours is probably in amongst them too. But why and how were all these individuals being targeted? In the words of Reddit user, OneSprinkles8094, I work for an organization in Hawaii with top-tier InfoSec, unpublished emails on a private server, Global Protect VPN, and we all get the Tuts Honeychurch emails on the regular. And it's not like the emails are being sent at random either. Fellow YouTuber Kalaki did a deep dive into the Tuts Honeychurch mystery fairly recently. About a week after posting his video, he received multiple emails from Tuts herself, indicating that she had indeed watched his video and actively messaged him. Like with all her other correspondence though, the contents read more like word salad than coherent thoughts. What we do know is that the emails are sent from dozens of different addresses, all of them beginning with the same 4 letters. Thon, with the T presumably representing Tuts, and the Hon, Honeychurch. Bizarrely though, some of them are mail.ru accounts, a Russian emailing service which is rarely used these days. Typing her name into Google, a number of social media accounts linked to Tuts Honeychurch reveal themselves. LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and 2 separate YouTube accounts. It's worth noting that she doesn't show her real face on any of them, mostly using photos of Adriana Lima and other models as her profile pictures instead. She frequently uses this picture in particular, perhaps because, as she addresses in one of her emails, in Silicon Valley, well-behaved honeychurches are 100% white, with blonde hair and blue eyes, and later alludes to being reborn in Silicon Valley. At least, I think that's what she's suggesting. Looking deeper, we can find her Instagram page, where she currently has close to 23,000 followers, and on which she formerly only followed one other person, a man named Mike Miskey. For those unaware, Mike Miskey Jr. was a Honolulu-based organized crime leader convicted of multiple felony charges, including racketeering and the presumed slaying of Jonathan Fraser. However, Miskey was found dead in custody just days before his sentencing. Eerily, Tuts mentions him in several of her emails, stating his case should be thrown out because, and I quote, "The 4 children of the 1978 serial killer already learned how to move individuals uncontrollably, eliminate others." Yeah, it's hard to decipher much of her writing, but after repeated read-throughs, I think she believes that certain individuals can control the thoughts, actions, and even conditions of others, forcing them to end their own existences against their will, or implanting diseases into them via curses or spells. A more recent Reddit account, which appeared under her name, and which has since been deleted, left a plethora of posts under a single Mike Miskey thread, talking about how she fears that she could be next. So, aside from being a person heavily invested in the Mike Miskey case, and who loves, or maybe even hates Jason Momoa, who is Tuts Honeychurch? well, although her name sounds completely made up, oddly enough, she is a real person. Though born Trudy Rosa Honeychurch, in one of her attachments, she shared a photo of her government-issued ID, confirming that she has since changed her full legal name to Tuts Honeychurch. In 2016, Tuts even ran as a Democratic candidate for Senate in Hawaii. She didn't win, owning just 1% of the vote share, but her candidacy is publicly documented and presented alongside this low-quality image of her.
Like somebody who's sending out fucking thousands of emails. Get the fuck out of here.
As part of her election campaign in 2016, Tuts launched a website titled Miss Tuts Honeychurch for US Senate, Hawaii. In the accompanying text, she writes, "Before bed, during milk and cookies, with technology, a computer, I would introduce myself to different educational universities of complete staff directories around the world. Introduce myself, where I live, my address, my work, my personal answer about everything. I have introduced myself, emailing educational universities of entire staff directories, amongst 1,000+ professors at each university, 300 different and repeating universities per month from 2008 till today. I have been emailed Yarmouk University in Jordan more than 500 times, King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia, Malaysia Military Academy called National Defense University of Malaysia. I've been to Stanford, Oxford, Yale, Princeton, and other numerous distinguished universities more than 500 times, with personal concerns directly to entire staff directories." So, there we have an explanation as to how so many ordinary individuals are receiving Tuts mail. She's been spamming entire university departments, emailing not only their staff members, but likely their student bodies too, and she's been doing this, apparently, to make them aware of her personal concerns. As for what those are, some people think that the messages are ciphers, that the first letter of each line in her emails is an encoded message, and that she's trying to warn the world about a government conspiracy without triggering online surveillance programs. There are, however, more plausible theories out there. Most obviously, that this is some sort of bizarro phishing scam, so if you have received one of these emails, I recommend not downloading any of the attachments. Aside from that, given her last name Honeychurch, and her previous allusion to the 4 children of the 1978 serial slayer, a few people were quick to link her to Bearbrook murder victim Marliese Honeychurch, whose body was found buried alongside 3 children, 2 of them hers, in New Hampshire. The 4 disappeared in 1978, though they weren't found until many years later, and weren't identified until 2019. One of the victims still remains unidentified. Though never officially confirmed, their lives were certainly ended by Terry Rasmussen, who's also suspected of being behind the disappearance of Denise Bowden, and who was convicted of the slaying of his wife, Yoon Jun. Considering that Tuts has made repeated references to the Bearbrook incident in her emails, stating things like, "Honeychurches don't belong in New Hampshire," and sharing slides like this, which include all of Rasmussen's victims, many think she's been mass emailing people to raise awareness about her family members' slayings, though due to her poor mental state, she's been unable to coherently spread that message. It probably doesn't help that she accuses her former classmate, now a dean at Kamehameha Schools, Lanakila Niles, of being the reincarnation of Rasmussen, and claiming that he and his partner are Mormon cult leaders. Though Tuts could indeed be related to the victims at Bearbrook, that remains unconfirmed, and for all we know, the emails are merely the digital footprint of a woman suffering from mental illness, one who's inserted herself into the case. As many have suggested, Tuts' ramblings indicate that she may suffer from schizophrenia or psychosis, though of course, to state that definitively would require a professional diagnosis. The final theory worth exploring is that these emails are being sent out by a bot, one impersonating the real Tuts Honeychurch, either as an attempt at training an AI model or an attempt at starting a strange ARG. That would help explain the mind-melting text and the sheer volume of emails that are being sent out. However, I'm inclined to believe that they have all been written by a real person. Though confusing, there's a definite through line to them. an organization to the chaos, so to speak. The topics are too personal, and frequently reference too many people from Tuts's past and present. So, is Tuts Honeychurch a whistleblower? A digital prophet? A lost voice crying out into the void? Or just someone with a computer, a mission, and no off switch? After almost 2 decades of relentless emails, we're no closer to understanding what she really wants, or who exactly she thinks is listening. Ultimately, the only person who knows what's going on here is Tuts herself, and it goes without saying that nobody should hound her for answers online. What's certain though, is this. Her emails weren't meant to stay buried in spam folders. So whether these are a warning, a plea, or just noise, Tuts is making sure her voice is heard. And now that you've heard it, let me know your thoughts down in the comments.
A psychopathic woman spams 1,000 email hour bulls and scared to check my email. Yeah, once again, shout out to bro who recommended them 2 other channels. Link in the bio. Join the Discord. Go follow me on Instagram.